Welcome back to another episode of The Short Box. My name's Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about an old school comic, Amazing Spider-Man 136. This was during Gerry Conway's classic run. This is post death of Gwen Stacy, post the debut of Punisher, and in this issue, we see the first appearance of Harry Osborn as the second Green Goblin. If you guys haven't already seen it, I just did an interview with Gerry Conway, and that video posted maybe a day or two before. And I thought, you know what? Well, first of all, I can't afford Amazing Spider-Man 129, which is the first appearance of Punisher. But this is another awesome issue, and I thought it'd be cool to kind of, take a look back at what Spider-Man used to be. Well, first off, as you can see, this is, by no means is this a mint copy of this issue. This is just a reader's copy. This is purely because I love Spider-Man, and if I can get an old issue on the cheap, doesn't need, for me it's more about having it in the collection than having a mint issue. You know what I'm saying? So first of all, it's written by Gerry Conway, art by Ross Andrew, inks by Frank Giacoia and Dave Hunt, letter Artie Simic, colorist L. Lessman, and editor Roy Thomas. Classic editor. He's written so many comics. I mean, we could do a whole conversation just on what Roy Thomas has brought to the comic book industry. But, right off the bat, something you'll notice, Gwen Stacy died at 121 and 122, right? That was the death of Gwen Stacy story arc. So this is just 14 issues later. But back then, that's like a year, right? So he's with Mary Jane, and you could see the 70s style clothing, because this was published in 1974. Gerry Conway is considered one of the great Spidey writers. As he said when we talked, he always thought that Peter and MJ belonged together. And I have to say I would agree as well. I've always been a huge fan of Peter and MJ. I was not happy when they kind of took away the marriage. Glad to see that they've kind of brought their relationship back, because I think it's one of the best relationships in comics. I think they belong together. I think that when they take them apart, it's kind of a disservice to each of the characters. So right off the bat, like he's going home. He still lives with Harry. She mentions here, will he be upset because MJ and Harry were dating, in the past, and there's a bomb goes off. Before we get back into the story, look at these old ads, man. You don't see stuff like this. I mean, Big Jim's muscle mover, where you click it and he breaks. I mean, dude, this shit is hilarious. Gotta love those old ads, man. So, like, back to the story, the bomb explodes, fucking MJ's hurt, Peter fucking, he's on the hunt. He needs to figure out what's going on. This is what's missing, I think, from comics. It's just like, this issue can be read by itself, and that's something that I think, maybe some writers don't really write for the single issue anymore, and they write for the trade. And this issue, while it was written in 74, it's amazing. It's just as good today as it was back then. More old ads, fucking karate ads, these fucking, man, I remember some of these when I was a kid, even into the early 90s. So, here we go, and now MJ's at the hospital, and like, he touches on the Gwen Stacy death and gives a brief recap. And this is, like, again, like I said, written for the single issue. He gives you the all the information you need within one page, of basically to catch you up with what's been going on over the past few issues. Talks about Goblin, talks about Gwen Stacy dying, the iconic imagery of Spidey trying to save her when she gets thrown off the bridge, and like, it goes into like where he finds out it's Norman Osborn as the Goblin, lets him go, And as Goblin comes to, tries to kill Spider-Man, and instead he gets killed. Got more ads. God, sometimes some of the ads in the old school comics are just as cool to me for the experience of reading old comics that I wasn't alive when they came out, but just to see kind of what kind of ads they were, because a lot of people say, "Oh, this is for kids, this is for kids," but I mean, Kung Fu Karate. I don't know that as a young kid, if I was reading this, I was all about that and wanting to do that. But it's kind of free 1 million in cash. Play guitar, it's 7 days or money back. Some of this shit is just so high school course at home. This shit is just so funny. And this is a thing that I think is missing too from comics. The letters pages, where you could write to the, like, look, Dear Gerry and Johnny, which is John Romita Sr., Dear Marvel Men and Women, Dear Bullpen. All these things are just so cool to see. And we got our classic Spidey tale. He has to figure out what's going on because Green Goblin's dead. But yet he still knows that this has to be the Goblin's doing, but who can it be? He goes, he checks off some clues, figures out that it can only be one person, right? And I love this little splash page is a precursor to some of the 90s things we would see. I mean, I'm not to say that there wasn't other splash pages, but I love this the composition of this page too is just really cool. It's just such a striking image with Goblin swooping in as Spider-Man has jumped with his web. As Goblin swoops in, he has no idea. He just sees that the Goblin's back. More ads. Hold on, here we go. And he knows that it's Harry, and just a classic, just a little battle between the two of them. We don't really get to see the extent of his friend basically turning on him and becoming dressing in the same costume of the man that killed his at the time his true love, Gwen Stacy. Just so cool to kind of look back at these comics, man. Got more ads. More fucking funny. Look at this is hilarious. Enjoy an exciting romantic look. Impressive anytime. Oh my god. This is literally selling you hair. You can buy a mustache, sideburns. Oh my god, this shit is so funny, dude. Love it. And this sets up many stories going on. Go back into the story. This is going to set up a lot, right? Because Harry's now the new Green Goblin. How did he become the Green Goblin? We don't know as of this story. We don't know why. Eventually, I mean, we all know. Any Spidey fan will know eventually what happens, and he becomes Green Goblin for quite a while, in and out of being the Goblin. Kind of loses it a little bit, And here we see that he discovered the Spider-Man costume in the issue before. So this kind of sets him up to like, oh shit, he thinks, because he thinks Spider-Man killed his dad, right? So now he loses it, and now he wants to kill Peter Parker. He snaps. And this sets up a whole different kind of dynamic between Goblin and Spider-Man because they were best friends. And now they're going to be pretty much mortal enemies. As you can see, this has been cut because somebody wanted their Marvel stamp. So, like I said, though, this was a reader's copy. I didn't care. I just wanted to have the comic. It wasn't important to me that, I can tape that, and this is literally one square. Who cares, right? So, Goblin tries to kill Spidey, doesn't succeed. Fast forward, now he's all, right here where it kind of cuts out. We see he's pissed and he quits the Daily Bugle. That's a back and forth between him and JJ. And while I don't have the next issue, I have, I've been reading Spidey for years, so this is the first time I've read this particular issue. It was really cool to take a look back at an old Spidey comic. I kind of didn't talk about this in the beginning, but just look at that cover. There's something really striking about that yellow. They're both colored red. It's very striking, and but it draws your eyes immediately to the battle between Goblin and Spidey on the cover. Something else, like the dialogue on the covers, we don't really see that as much anymore. This is just a fun issue, man. I highly recommend, if you ever see some old Spidey comics. If you're like me, just pick them up, man. Who cares what issue they are? Especially, who cares what condition they're in? There's nothing like reading them in the original issues as opposed to reading them when they're recolored. Just for example, like you see the coloring, that's going to be redone in a modern reprint. It's not going to be the same. I'm a sucker for like the aesthetic of like feeling the newsprint and the tactileness of the paper is different than it is now. I like to see the original coloring, how it was done back then, and I can't say it enough, man. I definitely think that picking up these original issues, even if it's not a key issue, man, just something to read, man. Just, there's a certain magic to these old comics. It's been fun going through this. I'll probably continue to do some of the older issues, sporadically throughout the channel. If you like what you saw and you want to check out some more of the videos, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. We also have a website, thecomiclounge.com. If you have any comments, you can drop them below, or you can email us at thecomicloungepod@gmail.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you're notified every time we put up a new video. And on that note, I'm out.